So we're going to talk a little bit about the startup DevRev. And we're basically talking about DevRev because they are providing us the platform that we're going to experiment with today. I'm going to start with what we do at DevRev. It's essential that all of us understand about a little bit about the product before we try to build and extend the product, right? So that's fair. So at DevRev, what we the way we think of ourselves is equivalent to being a co-pilot. I don't know if any of you, I don't know if the chat allows you to raise your hands, but are you all familiar with GitHub's Copilot? Has anybody used it? Feel free to put your responses in the chat window as well, so we can take a look later. But the idea of a Copilot essentially is a way to make your job simpler or easier by automating out things that can be automated out. So it lets you kind of focus on the real parts or the real pieces that bring value and remove things that can be auto-generated or automated. Now, there's always been automation, but with the advent of generative AI and the language models, the level of automation has really increased. And that's why I try to create these images, also using generative AI. So I use DALL-E 2 for the images. And the idea is, how can we actually build a product, which is the first stage? We have to write code. We have to make sure that it's tested and it's actually deployable and you actually have a product that somebody can use. So in that build stage, we are a co-pilot in the sense that we provide automation and assistance to make it easy for you to track your work, to be able to build things that are of value to the customer, to be able to echo the customer voice. And then once you've built the product, of course, you need some level of support. I don't think there's ever something that's built which is perfect right from the beginning, and then you don't need any support or any fixing. So support is another piece that our platform focuses on and tries to make simpler. So we try to build intelligence in this space as well. And once we've supported it, and let's say customers just love your product, the next step is you want to grow the number of customers who are using your product. So that's the next one that we also provide intelligent software for. Now, as I say this, DevRev is more of a platform than a product. And the distinction actually is very important in this group because when we say it's a platform, it means that it provides you a very strong foundation. It gives you a lot of features, a lot of critical features, but also leaves room for development and extension. So it allows for the community to come in there, participate, and extend the platform. A little bit like a good analogy is probably the iPhone and the App Store. So everyone could write an app, right? Something that appeals to your use case, to your personal experiences. And that's what we're trying to do with the DevRev platform as well. We would like everyone over here to be able to start building and extending all of these, all of the intelligence that we spoke about right now in these areas. So talking about that, I know everyone's like, okay, it's great to talk, but you promised that you're going to talk less. So we will talk less and we'll jump straight to the building blocks. Now, it's necessary to understand the building blocks of a platform so that you can use that very much like Lego blocks and build something out of it, right? And the building blocks, I don't know how many of you were part of the previous session where we spoke about APIs, the basics, but APIs are actually the building blocks. They give you pieces that to establish that foundation and then to extend it. Now in DevRev, given our context of what we're doing. And you know that I just mentioned a whole lot of things. So it's a wide array of things that we do on the platform, which is usually a very good thing from a developer point of view, because you actually have that many options to develop on. So you have that many areas that you can actually target. Now, coming to the crux of it, right? Like, what are the fundamentals or the building blocks? We have a user. Now, we use the concept of a user to represent the developer who's building the product, as well as a customer of the product. So we differentiate it using dev, which is like the dev user, the developer, and the rev user, who's the customer, which kind of comes together to form DevRev, our startup. The next part of it is we have the notion of something called parts. Now, as a user, so the reason the user is important as a building block is it actually gives you identity. So you can identify somebody on your platform, which is pretty important because you don't want to have actions which can't be attributed to anyone, right? Now, once you figured out the user, you probably want a way of organizing things, right? Like you have an idea and you want to start building, but then you do want to organize your thoughts into, traditionally, you would have a product and then you would have that product having a bunch of features. So having the ability to express that and organize it is what the fundamental block part is used for. Now, once you figure that out, so this is like the high level idea, you're like, okay, I have a good sense of what I want to build now. You want to actually start building, right? And as you're building, and you rarely build in a silo, like you rarely have just one person teams. And so you want to have a way that your work is visible to someone else. So you want to know that, hey, I'm coding up this server and you're coding up this client. I don't want to code up the same thing that you're doing, right? So just a notion, a way for you to track your work is the fundamental work. Again, this is kind of like a dual intent building block. It could represent work in the sense of a developer tracking their own work towards building a product, or the other piece where the customer is actually reporting that there is a problem. That's like the support piece that we spoke about. So we kind of break the work piece into tickets and issues for these two personas. Now, the key of all of this, like basically the skeletal, is communication, right? Like we need to be able to communicate across the organization between all of these different things that we're doing. And so communication is also a fundamental block. Now, the reason I kind of broke these into blocks and we're talking about these are each of these mirrors an API or a set of APIs, which essentially means that you have access to use these fundamental building blocks and build anything that you like out of it. You will have access to this presentation pretty soon. When you have access to the presentation, you will notice you can click on these and it takes you to the spec file. Just a second, sorry. Now, this is what we call the OpenAPI specification file. Like we spoke about this at length in the previous session. The idea behind this specification is having a precise way of conveying what your API exposes and what you can actually do with it. There's also like a sample response, you know, what you're going to expect. There is a notion of what is required. So you'll see on this, for instance, we'll deep dive into all of this. I'm kind of showing you this more in terms of just giving you a sneak peek into how a spec is and how you can interpret it. So this particular spec, for instance, it gives you the endpoint, which says works.create. And then it asks you for an API key. I'm sorry, I should have said this right at the beginning of the session, but I request you to please send your email IDs to Katya or Nadia. I know most people don't prefer to put their email IDs in chats. We respect your privacy. So please send them in private messages to Katya or Nadia, and they will make sure that you have access to our DevRev platform. Once you have access to the DevRev platform, there is a very easy way to get a token that you can feed in this piece into the authorization header. And we will walk you through that as we do the actual workshop. Now, once you have that out of the way, you want to know what is it that you absolutely need to populate in the API. I mean, it's totally fair game to look through every attribute that you can pass into the API, and I encourage you to do that. But as a starting point, there is a bare minimum that you need to do to be able to have a successful API call, and that is to fill out these required parameters. Now, jumping back into our game. So that was basically something I wanted to show you, because once you have access to this presentation, you would be able to just click on each of these, and you would know the APIs that correspond to these building blocks. The building blocks actually manifest on our platform this way, right? So you have something called support, something called build, product, customers, and these are like the different pieces that we spoke about. And we spoke about intelligence in all of these areas, right? So potentially these building block APIs would contribute towards features in all of these different areas. So once you actually give Katya or Nadia your email IDs, you would be able to access this and fetch the token, but also see the results of what you do on with your APIs. So it's not going to be like it's not like you're working in a mock environment, right? We're giving you a real platform where you can observe the what happens when you actually call an API, the different permutations and combinations, and so on. I'm going to quickly go to something called a Postman collection. I encourage all of you to actually try this yourself as well. But I'm going to quickly show you a couple of these API calls to explain how you can read what is in Postman. I'm also going to, in parallel, put this in the chat so everyone can get started trying to access it. At least open the link. So let's start with the users API that we spoke about. So in the users API, we have something called dev users self. What we're trying to do in this API is very simple, right? It's like, tell me who I am. No, it's like, that might sound ridiculous. Like, come on, how can you not know who you are? The idea behind this is we have unique identifiers in a system. Now, why can't we just use names, right? Names are not technically unique. Like two people could actually have the same name, or you could have migration issues because of which you end up with duplicate names, right? Like you want to have a unique identifier that sets you apart from everyone else, which is why you will notice that every API that creates an object actually gives it a unique identifier by which you can reference it. So in this dev user self, the only thing that you need, apart from the authorization, which we spoke about, which is common to all of the APIs, and when Katya actually does the demo, she will show you how to fetch this authorization token and populate it. But it's common to all of the APIs that we are going to talk about. Apart from that, you don't have any parameters that you need to pass in. So it's a great starting point for an API. But you do want to see what it returns, right? And so what you can do is scroll to the example response over here. And you also have an example request, just to be clear. So this is a way that you can view the request. You'll also notice you have an option to pick any language to view the request in. So if you do want to run this, if you prefer to run this not as a Postman collection, but an actual, I'm sorry, actual Golang or Python code or even a curl call, you can just do that. Choose the language of your preference. And on the right-hand side, you can actually see the corresponding examples. There is also an example response, which is useful because, and you'll see the response better when you actually run the collection and you actually get the response back. But that will give you a useful, an idea of what information you will get back in return for an API. I'm also going to tell you about paths create. So we spoke about paths. We said they're a way to organize our thoughts and our work. Not work, I guess. It could be work as well. But how would you actually create a path? Like, what is the minimum requirement, right? The minimum requirement is we want to give it a name. And then we want to say who owns it. You need an owner for a path. By the way, I think Origin's a pretty cool name, and Nadia came up with this. So thanks, Nadia. And then there is an owner of the path for which, like I said, everybody needs a unique identifier. So where do we get the unique identifier for this user? That's from the previous API we spoke about, right? We're going to get an ID in response. And this will become really clear when we walk through the Postman collection. But you'll notice that this particular ID that we've mentioned here is what you got in response for the previous API call. And then there is a type. So there are a few types of parts, depending on whether you want to build an entirely new product, or you want to just extend the product a little bit, or you want to build a feature, right? So depending on the granularity, you want to probably choose what type of part you're creating. So these are the 3 mandatory parameters. And then, yeah, that's it. You're good to go. You send this and you're able to create a part. And when you do this, you will actually be able to see the part on our platform to play around with. At this point, I think I will pass it on to, who's next? Nadia? So I'll pass it on to Nadia to talk through the rest of the APIs.
Awesome. Let me share my screen really quick. All right. Hi, everyone. I've got emails from some of you. If you need access for this platform, keep sending them to Katya or Ashwini if you haven't gotten access. So to go through more on these, so Ashwini talked through about seeing who the self is and seeing the identity there, and then being able to create a part, which is where you'd be able to think about the work and like where work for this group of people or this group of people can live. What I want to talk next about is to be able to do the same sort of identity structure as one would with the self. So in the same way you can have an ID for the self and you can create a part, every single part will also have an ID. So on this next field, you would need to have the ID of the field that you could have gotten from before, from when you created the part. And you can see all this additional information. Let me see if this is the right one. Yeah. You can see a bunch of additional information about the part when you are able to put it through, like about the part name, about the information about it. You can see the owner of it. You can see a lot of additional information in addition to the ID. And that ID, like for the user, is also the key really to knowing more about the different objects on your platform. Once I have a part, you can do a lot of different things with parts. Parts are kind of like, as DevRev is a platform, a part is kind of like a little island where you can put all the work that needs to happen for a particular group to be done on that particular part. So once you have a part and you have a part ID that you can use, the next thing you can do is go into works.create. And here you can create either a ticket or an issue, which are DevRev's 2 types of work. So we won't really talk about that right now because it might get a little bit confusing, but it's just different types of work for different parts of the app. And right now, when you have a part, you can just do work.create and have a piece of work that's tied to that particular part. One reason this is really cool is because on a part, like I said before, you can assign an owner and you can have someone who's responsible for this body of work. And so any work that's directed in this way or that way knows who at least should be the person to filter through it and decide where it goes. And from there, I'll hand it back to Katya. Let me just stop sharing.
Okay, let me try to share. Okay, so once we've identified ourselves, we created a part, we've created a work item. Say we want to add a comment to add some information to our work item or an update to it. One way to do it is first we need to do the same thing we just did with parts, and we need to get the work item that we have. One way to do it is just pass in the ID of our work item, right? That's the only required field. So we just pass it in and we get our work item back. The same as parts, and I guess the same as in most common APIs. And then we do another call to create the timeline entry, which is the fancy name for comments at DevRev. And that will require us to put in the ID of our work item that we just fetched from works.get, put in the type, that's timeline comment, and the body, that's one API down, which I also think Ashwini and Nadia came up with. Yeah, and that would allow us to go through the whole workflow of creating our part and work item and creating comment to that. Okay, back to Ashwini.
All right, I think we're all set for your demo now, Katya. So I think it's time to actually get our hands dirty. I want to give a few minutes though for anyone who hasn't shared their email ID or who doesn't have access to the platform. Is there anybody like that?
Yeah,
There's
is
someone who
Sherry.
raised.
Sherry just entered, I guess. So probably
Okay.
she doesn't have the. Sherry, you can send your email address to Ashwini or to Katya or to Nadia, and also Julie. Can you all raise the hands if you haven't got the access? I guess Julie got the access. Probably.
Okay, perfect. So for anyone who has already sent your email IDs to one of us, you should have received an invite in your email, the one that you shared. And you should be able to accept that invite. And once you accept that invite, you should have access to the platform. I'm going to invite a few more who just joined. And
there is one more, Leon.
Okay.
Leon McKenna. I'm not sure. Yeah, she has also. There is a raise hand from Leon also.
Okay. Leon, can you please send your email as well, and we will get you all access. I think
Sarah just mentioned that she has accepted it, and it says you do not have the access to view this page. Yeah, sure, Leon, go for it. Leon is probably sending you a direct message.
Okay.
And for Sarah, she is having do not have the access to view the page. Kashish also has the same issue as Sarah.
Have you been able to click on the link that to accept it, and then you should be redirected. Maybe at this point we can stop the recording because we can do a screen share and actually go through.
Oh, Elizabeth mentioned that probably, I'm not sure like who has saw the previous session of the same. So she's mentioning if someone has already given their email address to Katya last time, you might
take care. Yes. As long as you've given your email IDs already in the last session, you should have received an invite. And if you accepted it, you should have access to the platform.
Sherry, you will get an access once, since you have sent, so Ashwini will give you the access, or Katya or Nadia. So you will see an email. Do you want me to stop the recording?
Yeah, I think we can do that. Or maybe let's do one thing before we get into the hands-on session. I think it would be good if we can have Katya run through one Postman collection, just as an example. And then we can stop the recording and we can actually run through the rest together as a group.
Yeah, just for information to the participants, if you face any issue towards that while during the hands-on, you can just type in your message in the chat, so it will be taken care of by Nadia, Katia, or me. So you'll be probably getting the help.
Okay. Cool.
Katya, go ahead and share your
Okay.
screen, probably show them.
Sounds good. Okay. So first we need to get our token. So assuming you have the access to the platform, what you would do is, so here's your homepage, right? You go to the settings, go to account, and you create a new personal access token. You choose any utility that you want, create a cool name, you generate it, and you copy it so that you don't lose it anywhere, which I hopefully will not do right now. Okay, then you go to the link that Ashwini posted in the chat for the Postman collection, which is what we've been looking at right now. You click Run in Postman, Postman Web to Fork. This will create a copy of our collection that's specific to you. It asks you for some information. I don't think any of it is important. You probably can create a new workspace and specify its name. Then you fork the collection. And here are all of the API calls that we've just talked about, and they're configured for you. So you don't actually need to run any code or anything. You just need to run it in Postman in web. Okay, so for example, let's run the first API call, dev user self. So if I try to run it right now, I will get an authorized request because I have not put in my token yet. So what we will do is go to authorization right here, and there is some token here, but that's actually been revoked. So you will have to delete this again in the authorization part and paste whatever you gotten from your token on your the work account. And now if I hit send, I'll be authorized as myself. That's my full name. Okay, so if you do the same procedure in the next call, let's go to parse create. Let's go to authorization. We'll need to paste the token again. If we look at the body, you will see the parameters: name, origin, owned by dev user one, type product. We want to change the owned by from dev user one to what we've gotten from the previous request. So now if I go back, I can see that my display ID is actually dev user 2. So instead of putting that in parse create, I can just do this. And now it will create a part that I'm an owner of. And if we go to the DevRev app that we've just been on, and we go to parts, you'll see that there is an origin part and I'm its owner. That's what we are going to do in a nutshell, except we will have to do this 4 more times. Each time we will have to paste your token, which I now lost. Yeah, and I think that, okay, let me do one more, but the rest of them are the same, and I would encourage you guys to try that on their own and let us know if any questions come. So if I try to, well, I guess now we hit the.
You get an so somebody is trying as yours from Elizabeth. They are mentioning that when I tried Postman Fork, I get we can't seem to find this page error.
So I think let's, once Katya wraps up the recording, let's get into the session at that point, and then we'll start debugging each person's error and make sure that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes.
So, yeah, I just tried to pass the default value. I've forgotten that we need to actually go to our parts create response that we've gotten the ID from, that for just created part, and we need to pass that as the ID of the part that we're getting in the third call. So now I have the ID configured and authorization configured, and if I hit send, it will give me the part. Okay, so for the works create call, we again will need our token. And we already know that I'm the user 2 and that my part was number 6. You can post both display IDs or the ID that you get from the parts get poll. So this will work, or if you for some reason prefer the very long ID, is it here? It should also work. Okay, so we fill in our title, we fill in our type, we hit send, and it's again a successful work created. So if I go to the part now, let me update it. See, so now we have created one issue. And if I go to the issue, it says that I'm its owner and it's called Conquer the World, one API at a time. Okay, so now we want to get the work item that we just created. For that, we will need token and the ID of the part that we've also gotten from the response. So this is the ID. Kind of complicated, but we just copy and paste it here. Oh, right here. Okay. Alternatively, I could just do the display ID, which is ISS-3. Okay, now I've gotten my work item information, and now what's left is to just create the comment. So again, I will need to pass in my token. And then if I go to prompts, right, okay. So I know that my issue has number 30. The type is time comment, and the body is one API down. And if I hit send, we've created the comment on our issue. And if I update the page, we'll hopefully see it. Yep, there it is. So that's the demo. Let me stop sharing. Hopefully,
yeah, sorry, Katya, go ahead.
Well, hopefully it was clear, and I'm sure we will figure out every problems that anybody has.
Awesome. So I think we can stop recording at this point, and then we can repeat it slowly and get people to follow us as we do it.